The stock market is all abuzz over the shares of GameStop soaring over 1,700% in the last week. Looks like a bunch of kids on social media set Wall Street on fire, and it is having consequences. Thanks to the big tech bros. I had really had to brush up on my economics to figure this one out, because I think that the Democrats will make a big stink out of this whole thing, and they already have. We should definitely talk about it. This is Gene, and you're listening to Dumbasses Talking Politics. Hey, this is Gene. Welcome back to Dumbasses Talking Politics. Sorry I didn't do a podcast yesterday. I actually wrote this one up because this was pretty frickin' complicated. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about Wall Street and how it got hosed yesterday, this last week, and how we're getting hosed by big tech again. So essentially what happened was a bunch of Reddit users decided to mess with the stock market, targeting their ire on hedge fund managers on Wall Street. Regular folks who do not know much about the stock market are celebrating this, including me. I think it was great. I thought it was kind of funny. I'm not sure how legal it is, though apparently it is. We'll talk about that later. I did listen to Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro. They both basically said, oh, this is fine, nothing's illegal here, and I'll explain why later. But the first thing we need to do, let's talk basic stock market and how it actually works. The stock market is there so that people can invest into a publicly traded company. What's nice about this is an individual can actually own part of a company, and the company is able to raise funds to reinvest into the company. If a company has a good strategy, is well run, they have a good chance of making a profit, and the company becomes more desirable, raising the stock price. Likewise, a company with crappy management and no strategy will force stock prices to go down. Basically, the stock market is a good indicator of an actual value of a company. So that's how it works. Most stocks are based off the relative value of the company. Sometimes stocks aren't. A company is not at the correct value. It'll either be priced too high or too low. If the price of the stock costs too much, people who know the value of the company will buy the stock, raising the price of the stock until it reaches the appropriate price. If the stock price is too high, well, the hedge fund manager will get to work. This is how hedge funds actually work. A hedge fund manager will borrow a stock for a certain amount of time with the promise to return the stock plus a fee. Let's say I borrow stock that is priced at $100. I promise that in a week I will return the stock plus give the guy $10. Now I already know as a hedge fund manager this stock is not worth $100, so it'll fall. I immediately get the stock from the guy I borrowed it from and sell it for $100. The stock in that week corrects itself. It actually drops down to $20. The hedge fund manager will then buy the stock for $20. He'll return the stock to the original order, plus give that guy $10. So the hedge fund guy makes $70 profit on the stock. This is called shorting a stock. Now, things can go wrong, and this is where there is a lot of issues with people have with hedge fund managers. Let's say a stock doesn't go down, but it goes up to $300 a share. In other words, the hedge fund guy was wrong. Then the hedge fund manager gets screwed because he has to buy the stock to return to the person he borrowed it from for $300, plus he has to give that $10. This is called a short squeeze. It's when a hedge fund manager completely misses the value of a stock and he ends up taking in the butt. Now, what people hate about this is that the government will usually bail out the hedge fund managers, or a bigger hedge fund will actually bail that guy out. No one bails out someone like me who, if I decide to buy a stock thinking it's going to go up, no one bails me out if I do that. If I lose the money, I lose the money. But hedge funds managers, they do that. Now, I understand why people get mad about these hedge fund guys always seeming to get bailouts, but this actually isn't really their fault. It's more of a governmental problem. The government needs to stop bailing these people out, and I think it should. The government should have nothing to do with what you do on the stock market. But it's kind of like, I can't blame the hedge fund guys, because it's kind of like people manipulating their taxes so they don't have to pay as much taxes. You always hear these millionaires never have to pay taxes, full taxes, because they know how to manipulate the tax law. That's not the millionaire's fault. That's the government's fault with their lousy taxes. Same thing here. Now let's enter GameStop. So, little thing about GameStop. GameStop is a video game store. They sell new and used games, video game consoles, and a bunch of little collectibles, little knick-knack things. It's an expensive store, and it can't compete with companies like Amazon, so it's not particularly profitable. The stock price in January, mid-January, was $17.25. So this is not a real heavy stock. A bunch of Reddit users decided to screw with the market. This was actually more of an experiment than anything else. What they did is they got together and all of them decided to start buying GameStop stock. This raised the price incredibly. One Reddit user bought 50,000 shares of stock worth about $56,000. So these guys weren't screwing around, and most of these Reddit users are investors, so they do invest. They did this as kind of an experiment, and they also did this because they don't like hedge fund guys, so they wanted to screw them. Well, hedge fund managers saw that the stock was inflated and thought they could make a killing. The stock at this point had doubled already, had gone a little bit over double. Now remember, it was $17.25, so it was about $40 a share. So they went out to short sell the stock. But the Reddit users had different ideas. Instead of the Reddit users selling their stock as it went up, they bought more. The stock ended up hitting about $450 a share. Now, how much is that an increase? I'm telling you, as of this writing, it was $340. When I wrote this, it was $347 a share, but it ended up getting to $450 a share. That's over a 2,000% increase in price. The hedge managers got screwed. I'm not kidding when I say the hedge fund managers took millions, tens of millions of dollars in losses. Because this guy who bought the stock for 40 borrowed, 10,000 stocks from somebody to short sell it, and then suddenly he had to pay $400 per stock, plus he had to pay his fees. So this was just horrid. Today the stock is dropping like a rock, but not as quick as they wanted. It was down as of Thursday by 44%. But on Friday morning, it's again kind of rebounding and going up again. So I really could have waited till Monday or Tuesday to talk about this, simply because there seems to be a lot of movement with this stock. Now, is this a good thing? Not really. It can be funny how the experts completely got fooled, but it can also be true that it's not necessarily a good thing. The government doesn't think it's a good thing. We'll get into that later, because there have been some updates as of Thursday evening. It shows how easily the stock market can be manipulated and artificially inflated or deflated. Don't be surprised that this situation does not come up by the left as showing how bad capitalism is and how bad the stock market is. As a matter of fact, if you cruise on Twitter, that's all they're talking about right now, is how evil the stock market is and how evil everyone is. They will say it is an unstable system, absent of any morality, and that it needs to be changed. This is happening right now. So let's get into this first. Let's talk about the actual legality, ethics, and morality of this whole thing. because I think you might be surprised with some of my answers. The first thing I wondered was whether this was even legal. I had to actually look this up. Did these Reddit users break insider trading laws? The answer is no. Let me explain. And trust me, I had to look this up. If Martha owns 1,000 shares of a widget stock that is already at market price, say $10 a share, she may not make any money on this. She may decide that this isn't good, and she wants to manipulate it. So what she does is she calls a bunch of her friends and a bunch of investment houses and said the widgets are going to go straight up and they should buy as soon as possible before the stock soars. Her friends contact their friends and all start buying the stock. The stock begins to rise artificially based on Martha's lie about the strength of the stock. When the stock hits $30 a share, Martha sells the stock, making a 200% profit. This is illegal. She is artificially inflating the stock by lying to other buyers of the stock. This is fraud. Insider trading violations can occur in the opposite direction. If you didn't know, I was talking about Martha Stewart, who served some time in jail for insider trading. She did not make a profit on those stocks, but actually ended up losing about $50,000. But she did get a tip. She did get rid of the stocks before she lost more, and she got caught. If you've ever seen Wall Street, The Boiler Room, The Wolf of Wall Street, they do this all the time in those movies. They actually artificially inflate stocks, typically by frauding customers or frauding other houses, which are the investment houses. But in this case, the Reddit users were not really hiding anything. They said they were going to experiment with manipulating the stock market, and they were there to screw hedge fund managers. There was no fraud. There was no lying. So there were no laws broken here. All it did was show the weakness of the stock market. These guys just made a lot of money while others lost their shirts, especially the hedge fund managers. So as far as any investigations, there's really nothing to investigate. As a matter of fact, I'll even go a step further. The hedge fund companies, this was kind of their fault. They should have investigated. I mean, when you saw GameStop, I'm going to say this again later, but when we saw GameStop go to $40 a share from $17.50 a share, I would have been the first one saying, okay, what's going on here? Something's wrong. So the next thing is this unethical? Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I have a friend who lives with me and we were talking about this. We were debating what this whole thing was about. That's why I looked this up and I learned what happened and was absolutely amazed by the story. We had a conversation about whether this was legal, and I explained it based on my understanding. Initially I thought this was illegal, but now I know it's not. But then he asked whether or not I thought this was moral or ethical. This is a great question, and I had to think about it. I came up with this analogy. Okay, one decides to go to a casino to gamble. Everyone knows that the goal of the casino is to make all your money so that they can make a profit. Most people know that the slot machines are manipulated in order to pay off a certain amount. Let's say 90 cents on the dollar. They advertise this. So the machine is not made to pay out jackpots. But it's basically they'll promise you, okay, you'll get 90 cents, maybe 92 cents on the dollar. It's there to keep playing. But you know that if you keep playing and you don't hit a jackpot, you're eventually going to lose everything. And even if you do hit a jackpot, that's why they tell you, when you hit the jackpot, get off the machine. They do say that. The casinos, so the casinos aren't hiding this. They are taking your money, and they know. Gamblers also know that once a machine hits a jackpot, he or she might as well find another machine because that machine will not pay out anytime soon. They're actually set to pay out only a certain number of times a day or with a certain number of spins. In the old days, a winner of a jackpot would actually perform one more spin just so that other gamblers would not know a jackpot was paid off, and they'd actually start working on that machine. That gambler who won the jackpot would then go back to that machine later in the day and see if he could pull another jackpot from it. So is the casino unethical for setting the machines to only win at certain times? No, because the people already know or suspect that this is happening. It's not a surprise. Is the player who takes the spin unethical for taking a spin after winning a jackpot so other players will play on the slot? No. He wants the machine to restart the count to another jackpot so he can play the machine later, and he wants to lure other players to play this machine so they can start working on the reset of the machine. It might sound like a weird analogy, but it's not. The stock market is the casino of capitalism. Even the most professional stockbrokers know they could lose money at any time. I'll go a step further. I don't blame the Reddit users for screwing around with the stock market. I blame the hedge fund managers for not doing their research. Like I said a few seconds ago, when a stock goes up 200%, the first thing I'd like to know is, okay, what's happening and why is this stock going up 200%? The performance of the company has not changed. Yes, they have 5,000 stores, but they're not, their profit margins are razor thin. Most of their sales are from used video games, which means they don't make as much money. What's going on? If one of those hedge fund guys had just decided to read a Reddit post, they would have known what was going on and probably stayed away from the company. Or maybe they just shouldn't have jumped on the stock right away and waited to see what actually was happening. So no, I don't think this is unethical. It is a risk one takes in the stock market, just like the same risk you take when you walk into a casino. There's a chance that the Reddit users could have failed and lost money also. This was an experiment for them. They were not doing this. They were not doing this knowing what would happen. They were actually experimenting with this idea that they had of artificially inflating a stock, screwing hedge funds, and then cashing out when it hit $450 a stock share. That leads us to our next question. Was this process immoral? Is what the Reddit users did immoral? I never like mixing morality with the stock market. It's like mixing morality with gambling. It's just not a thing. But I was asked if the Reddit users was moral and right. Well, my first thought on that is it has nothing to do with moral and right. It's just money. It's how you make money. That's it. So I don't think anything about morality and what is right and things like that. I'd have to say probably no, it's not moral, but maybe. I look at the actual intentions of the Reddit users, and their intentions were very obvious. What motivated them to go in and screw with the stock market? The first motivation, and believe it or not, making money was not really their first motivation. That was what was weird. This was actually a test they were doing. And a lot of these guys and gals were investors. The person I told you that spent $56,000 on stock, that's a chick. They were all investors. So they knew what they were doing. So the first motivation is they wanted to experiment with manipulating the stock market. They wanted to test their theory. This in itself is not immoral. But remember the line from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and actually this isn't from Romeo and Juliet. They don't really know where this is from. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. They did not really research who they would hurt with this manipulation. That could be considered kind of immoral. Because here's the reality. The hedge fund managers, yes, hedge fund companies and hedge fund managers, yes, they could get killed on the stock market for that week. That's absolutely true. But in reality, they're going to be fine. Other hedge funds services, the government, they'll bail the hedge funds and the hedge fund managers out. But the guy who's going to get caught is going to be the guy that actually is the little guy. He's the inexperienced, unwise investor. It's the little guy that's on Robinhood, which we're going to get to soon, Robinhood app, and decides to buy some GameStop. He's the one that's going to get screwed in the whole thing. It's not going to be the hedge funds and hedge fund managers. It's going to be the little guy. So right off the bat, you could say it's a borderline immoral, because if I had gone in and bought 100 stocks of GameStop, I could really have gotten screwed in that whole thing. Second motivation was to screw hedge funds, screw hedge fund companies, screw hedge fund managers. I think this is kind of immoral. They went out to hurt a specific group of people. I think that's immoral no matter how rich they thought these people were. But what's worse is the hedge fund managers aren't going to get hurt. Again, not going to get hurt here. It's going to be the uneducated investor. The little guy is going to end up holding the bucket. So, yeah, I think that second motivation is really questionably moral. Now, mind you, none of this is illegal. Stock market is laissez-faire economics. You just go. All right. Finally, these guys wanted to make money. There's absolutely nothing immoral about this. And they did. They made millions. These guys, they just interviewed. I was really surprised. One of them was actually interviewed. And he said, yeah, well, we went out there and he admitted it. We went out there to screw these hedge funds. And that's what we were there for. And when they said, well, did you make any money? He said, I made a ton of money. But he was already living well. He was already an investor. So this guy knew what it was. The question is, if one's motivation is immoral, does this make the entire action immoral? And that's a great question. For example, we did want to make money. There's nothing immoral about that. But we did want to screw hedge funds. That's kind of immoral. You ended up screwing the little man. That's very immoral. Does that mean their action is completely immoral? I don't know. I didn't lose anything because I don't invest. It is gambling. You are gambling. So I didn't think anything of it. My 401k doesn't take a nosedive because we invest in preferred stocks and we don't invest in sticky stocks like AMC Theaters, which was another one, BlackBerry, which is another one, or GameStop. So it doesn't hurt me at all. Who it does hurt is the short sellers and hedge funds. So I'm not really sure that you could consider any of this truly immoral, because I know short selling is always dangerous. It's never a good idea. It's always better to get your stocks that continually go up. So here's the thing. Was this a good thing for the United States or capitalism? Here's the thing. Two things can be true at once. I think this experiment was really funny and good for these folks for proving a point while working the system to make a ton of money. I don't hold any will against them. They're clever, and I wish them the best, and I wish I could have been as smart as they were. That being said, I don't think this was a great exercise for capitalism or Wall Street. This screwed the little guy. It screwed the casual, uneducated investor who probably lost a ton of money. It shows the stock market has vulnerabilities. This is inviting governmental regulation on the stock markets, and I think that is extremely dangerous. And we actually already saw this with Robinhood. I'll get into that in a second. It shows the evil and greed of capitalism. Watch the Left is going to say this, and they're already saying it. Now, the kicker here is with this whole thing, Democrats and Republicans pretty much agree. They don't necessarily disagree with the Reddit users. They disagree with how this is being handled by the stock market and certain investment firms. We'll talk about that. This is another excuse by big tech, supported by the Democrats, to start banning people. And we're talking specifically with Reddit. Here's the thing. Reddit has already been banned, by the way. That group has already been locked. A bunch of online trading apps have been banned from trading GameStop, BlackBerry, and AMC theaters, all of which these Reddit users invested in. What was the reason? The group actually was said they fomented hate speech and violence. What? This is bad. The app Robinhood actually banned people from selling their stock. From buying more stocks or selling stocks. It had completely taken them off for a day. This is dangerous. Now big tech is not only screwing with our free speech, it's now screwing with our economy. This is terrible. What should have happened? GameStop should just keep going. Eventually it'll correct. Okay? But people should be able to sell their stock. People should be able to buy if they want to. If they're stupid enough to want to buy a stock at $350, they're idiots. But they should be able to do this. The last point isn't important. I even heard on Fox News at 5, mostly run by conservatives, that this could have been a right-wing bucking of the system. You do hear this already on Twitter. That, again, those damn conservatives, those alt-right QAnon conservatives. We're going to have to talk about what QAnon is, because we all seem to be accused of being QAnon these days, are out there to jack with the system. Yeah, maybe. But usually the simple is the most accurate. Maybe it was just a bunch of millennials with technical and economic experience that just wanted to mess around. It had nothing to do. Some of them were probably right-wing. Some of them were probably left-wing. It didn't make any difference. But this will be the story. I mean, look what happened on January 6th. The media is still beating on that. And it's been 3 weeks now. Meanwhile, they haven't said anything about the left-wing Antifa blowing up Portland and Seattle in the last week. So this is going to be a new narrative. Maybe these guys just wanted to experiment with the stock market. Maybe it had nothing to do with politics. Everything has to be made political today. Let's face it. Everything needs to be made political today. But it does make for a curious discussion. Could this be the way one rebels? Start messing with the functions, the institutions? You hear it on Fox News a lot. Tucker Carlson especially is fight, fight, fight. Doesn't mean go out there and beat the crap out of somebody with a baseball bat, but make yourself known, go out there and do something. And this type of manipulation might be the civil war that I've been talking about. Maybe it's going to be a technological civil war. There's practically a civil war between the people and the big tech. Robinhood basically screwed the little guy by not allowing the little guy to trade the GameStop stock. That was bad. Maybe this is where a civil war is going to go. More reaction is coming. This story is not going away. It's already been 2 weeks that this has been happening. It's still, today I heard more information. The stock dropped, like I said earlier, 44%. Well, as of this morning, it went up again. So it's going to be really curious to see what's going to happen with this stock. Really curious to see what's going to happen with this stock. And I got a feeling this isn't the last we're going to hear of it. Okay, on Sunday, I'm going to do a special. Sunday, we're going to talk about the 1619 Project. Now, I promised you that I would compare the 1619 Project with the 1776 Commission Report, which was done by Donald Trump. So we're going to talk about that on Sunday. It'll be a longer show. It'll be probably closer to an hour. Worked really hard on it. Had to read that whole damn 100-page thing again, which was really painful. You can. I don't care about Twitter. We're not going to do this. Parler isn't open yet, so you're free to follow me on Twitter if you want to just take a look at my notes. You can see where my Twitter handle is. You can download or listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, and YouTube. You can visit my website at www.dumbassestalkingpolitics.com, where you can read my links and you can look at my show notes. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you on Sunday. This is Gene, and you've listened to Dumbasses Talking Politics.